The next question comes from Mike Dennison and goes to Senator Walsh.
Senator Walsh, you're the only Iraq war veteran in the U.S. Senate, yet I don't believe you've ever told us whether you think the war in Iraq was a good idea or has accomplished anything positive for our country or the Middle East. Has it? Was going to war in Iraq a good idea? And what should our Iraq and Middle East policy be going forward?
Well, Mike, you're right. I am the only one on the stage that has worn the uniform and served in the combat. Today, we only have 2 United States senators serving in the United States Senate who have served in combat, myself and Senator John McCain. I had the distinct pleasure of commanding the 1st of 163rd Infantry Battalion in Iraq in 2004 and 2005, where I took over 700 of Montana's finest young men and women with me into Iraq. It was a very difficult mission, but I'm proud of my service. I'm proud of the service that they did. The unit was awarded the Valorious Unit Citation for our accomplishments, so I am proud of the work that we did. You know, it was a very difficult mission, and I talk about that from the perspective of, as I was traveling around the state of Montana, talking with families, my #1 priority was to make sure that we brought all 700 plus men and women home that I took over there with me. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. When we put our task force together from all over the country, I lost 4 soldiers, 1 from Montana, 1 from Oregon, 1 from Washington, 2 from Montana, I'm sorry, and 1 from Oregon and 1 from Washington. So, and several were injured. Another young man that I know quite well and I communicate with on a regular basis will live the rest of his life in a wheelchair because he's paralyzed below the waist. So the war in Iraq has cost this country greatly. The families that have been impacted, the cost to our government, the cost that we have put these wars on the credit card are outrageous. So I honestly do not believe that we should have sent our men and women, knowing what we know today, into Iraq.
Congressman Daines, your answer?
Well, the unfolding events that we're seeing in Iraq today are very, very concerning as we see these ISIS forces, that where you have the Islamic State of Iraq has now joined forces with the Islamic State of Syria. And so you have the ISIS, the Islamic State of Syria and Iraq, that have joined forces here. And if you're watching the news breaking really every 24 hours, where they've now entered Mosul, which is the ancient city of Nineveh, moving south into Tikrit, and they're now knocking on the door of Baghdad. This is another example, I think, truly of the failed policies we've seen of the president who's leading from behind. And I don't believe we should commit boots on the ground in Iraq. But I do believe we need to be more proactive and get out in front of this because we have a tragic situation unfolding. And I too share the significant hurt of knowing that we had nearly 4,500 Americans who've lost their lives in Iraq, 28 Montanans who lost their lives in Iraq. And consequently, we want to make sure that we have policies in place here, but with good military objectives. #1, we have to have a clear objective. Why are we going in the first place? Is there a clear objective? And #2, is there overwhelming force being used? If you don't meet those 2 clear objectives, we have no business being and deploying troops overseas.
Mr. Roots, your answer?
Was going into Iraq a good idea? Absolutely not. We were lied to get into Iraq. It was a lie. We were told stories by the Bush administration about how there were weapons of mass destruction. It was a lie. We demonstrated that it was a lie. We were brought into Iraq under false pretenses. Even in the broader picture, this global war on terror is a lie. The average American is more likely to die drowning in your bathtub than from a terrorist attack. You're more likely to die from a bee sting than from a terrorist attack. These 2 parties have built a totalitarian network of surveillance and of control with SWAT teams all over the world. Listen, tanks, bombs, missiles. We've spent $1 trillion in Iraq. We've achieved absolutely nothing. They've just taken the resources of the American people and they've funded these wonderful, General Dynamics, Raytheon, these great defense contractors. They've made millions off of the war in Iraq. The American people are impoverished by the war in Iraq. We need to not send any more of our resources into those theaters. We need to bring everything back home. We don't spend enough on defense. We spend nothing on defense. We spend way too much on offense. It's time to get the U.S. military carved back, close those bases, and bring them home.
Senator Walsh, your response?
You know, another thing that I'm very disappointed in the president in, he's talking about keeping 9,800 forces in Afghanistan for the next 5 to 10 years. Currently, we're paying approximately $1.2 million per soldier in Afghanistan to keep them there. Once if we drop below the 10,000 level and we keep them there for 5 to 10 more years, that cost will go up to $2.3 million per soldier. It's time to bring our soldiers home from Afghanistan, and we need to do it now. And that means all of our soldiers home from Afghanistan immediately.
Congressman Daines, your response?
So, John, I want to thank you for your service to our country as well, serving in Iraq. Thank you. I appreciate that, truly. I think it brings up another issue, though, that ties to this discussion, and that is the importance of driving towards American energy independence. We, within this next 10 years, have the ability, if we don't allow government to get in the way with regulations, to become energy independent and be a net energy exporter. Our allies over in Europe, when they saw that former KGB colonel named Putin going through Ukraine and Crimea, they were writing us saying, how quickly can you start moving liquid natural gas? Because 30% of the natural gas that comes through the Ukraine supplies Europe. So the faster we can get to a energy independent status in this country, the more secure the next generation is going to be.
And Mr. Roots, your response?
You know, there was a global poll about where they asked people all over the world. They went all over the world very recently. I think it was last fall. And they asked them, in your opinion, what is the most dangerous, what is the greatest source of danger in the world? Which country on earth is the most dangerous country on earth? Which is the greatest source of insecurity and instability in global affairs? Guess what it was? The United States won, going away. It wasn't even close. Second was Pakistan with like 5%. The people of the world, listen, we are drone killing with predator drones. We're flying over other countries. We're surveilling everybody's telecommunications, all in the name of keeping the United States safe from what? Terrorism? Again, you're more likely to die from a bee sting. You're more likely to die from a lightning strike than from terrorism. It's time to stop spending so much money